Two things are going to happen in today's video. Firstly, I'm going to build a simple but hopefully lovely set of drawers from these. And secondly, instead of me boring you by describing exactly what you can see on the screen happening anyway, I'm going to give you a helpful tip at every single stage of the build. And that's going to be a total of 125 tips. And so whether you're just starting out or learning as you go, I guarantee at least 90% of these tips are going to be useful. At least a third are going to be useful reminders for your next build, and more than 10 will be new to you. So let's take this wood and turn it into something lovely. And that starts right here with getting it cut down to size. We've got a lot to get through, so let's start with tip number 1. Safety. Don't blindly do what I'm doing here. No crown guard, no dust mask, no safety glasses. Respect the safety of the machines that you're working on. Choose the right wood. Choose what you can work with, what you can get, what you can afford, and if you have a wider freedom of choice, choose what's going to look good on the piece you're making. When the wood arrives, check it for defects, knots, splits, cracks, dents and dings, and work around them. Make a plan for the build for the tools that you actually have. Take this crosscut jig for instance. It's around about 120mm wide. So instead of my original plan of 125mm wide, this build suddenly becomes 120. That way I can use my sled. And while we're talking about the sled, use tools that will create repeatability and accuracy. Line things up to the actual curve made by the blade. Don't always measure everything. Use referential measurements throughout the build. And cut 1. Check your calibration, because if that's not square, none of your cuts will be. And as we cut the sides for this build, remember you don't need to cut straight to your final dimensions. Because what I like to do, especially if you need identically cut boards, rough cut once, close to your desired dimension, stack them all on top of each other and do one cut so they're all absolutely identical. And you're going to see me do this throughout the entire build, whether it's for the drawer box itself or for each of the singular drawers as well. Now this goes back a little bit to the planning stage. Joinery. Pick the joinery you can do and the one that's appropriate to the build. In this, I'm going to use rebates for everything. And the fact I'm using them for everything also goes to a tip later on. Now as we lay out the joinery on each piece, ready to make the cuts, it's really tempting to just measure and draw the lines. What I suggest, especially for rebates, is mark them off the piece that's going to sink into them. I could assume these are all 12mm thick, but by the time they come to you, they might not actually be exactly how you ordered them. And then as I've got a top and a bottom, don't remeasure and remark, transfer from one to the next. Now there's many ways of getting the job done here, and it can come down to personal choice, safety and whatever tools you have. But I'm going to show you the two ways that I cut rebates. Firstly, and this is my favourite of all, is using the same crosscut sled, but the biggest tip here is you're calibrating the blade height. Do a test cut on a scrap piece of wood. But there's a bonus point with this. If you can make it from the same piece of wood that you're actually building with, you'll get a much more accurate test cut. Now, unlike cutting the sides themselves, if you want repeatability and accuracy, use stop blocks where you can. And as an additional tip, sneak up on the right cut. Don't go for it on the first pass. Work your way towards it where you can. Like here, where I'm lining up the very internal cut of the rebate first, then setting a stop block, then I can run all the pieces through to get that same line, that same cut on every piece that needs a rebate. And this can be translated to any build, cut in the right order. And as an additional tip, check that first cut to make sure that it's absolutely spot on, because a small mistake now can be fixed really easily. Sneak up on the right fit, really dial in the rebates, because it is a typical joint where you will see any little gaps. Now every build needs test fits. This is true no matter what you're building. At every end stage you get to, put the pieces together, put your hand on your hip and take a really good look. Test out aesthetics and strength, because one without the other is useless. There's certain jobs that power tools can't do, so getting used to using hand tools will get you better results. But if you get carried away enjoying it, you might end up taking too much wood off. Take cleaning up these rebates for instance. A really good rule of thumb is what you do to one, do to the rest. That way one won't end up being deeper than the others. Once you're happy with the fit, don't just join your pieces together. Now is the best time to sand before doing any construction. The most important area here being the inside of the box, because it's going to be hard to get to later on. In fact, there's a really good argument for doing this before you've made any cuts at all, just to the original board that you've got in front of you. Now, I know not many people particularly like sanding, but there is a good way and there are some tips that help you get through it. I'm going to do half now and then half later when we do the rest of the sanding. Start with the right grit. The wood that I ordered had been through an industrial planer thicknesser, so the quality of the finish on it was really good. So I'm starting here at 80 grit. But if your wood's a little bit rougher, start lower.
Put something soft and grippy under the piece that you're going to be sanding. And while you're sanding, move slowly and carefully. Ensure that the majority of the sander is on the piece, not off it. That will stop you rounding off the edges. Every time you move from one grit to the next, remove the dust from the piece you're working on. I see a lot of people do this using compressed air, but if you're in a small workshop like me, a large air compressor can just take up too much space. And so this fantastic cordless air duster from Wolfbox, the MF200, may just be the solution for you. I've already found a load of jobs for it, from removing dust from my tool storage to clearing my air filters, my shelves, my floor, even my electronics in my office. It's one of the most useful tools I've tested in years, particularly because it's portable and takes up no space at all when you compare it to the footprint needed to house a big air compressor. And it knocks spots off the mini leaf blower I was using before. The battery is replaceable, the peak wind speed is 87.5 meters per second, and there are 3 levels so you can power up or power down depending on your needs. It comes with different nozzles to suit different jobs, like a flat one for wide surfaces or a longer one for hard to reach places. You get between 10 and 105 minutes of use on one single charge, depending on the power setting you choose, and it can charge to full in 2.5 to 3 hours. I won't be buying an air compressor as a direct result of this tool. I highly recommend checking this out for yourselves, and I'm going to leave a link in the description as you will definitely find many uses for it. And now the sanding's done, I've still got 120 more tips for you. Now is a really good time to just inspect for any more defects. There shouldn't be any, but if there are, it may not be the end of the world, depending on where you align that piece within your build. So for me, the dent on this internal piece will have to be at the back. And now we're going to put the pieces together in a dry fit. This is where you construct it using clamps, but you don't put glue in the joints yet. There's many reasons to do this: proportions, aesthetics, strength, seeing if your joints are tight. For me, the main reason is clamping positions. It's like taking a practice swing at golf. This will mean when you come to do it the second time, there'll be less surprises. And once it's held together, check for square. This is also the perfect time to do some pre-preparation for the glue up. Anywhere that you're going to glue a joint, if you put tape on the wood face next to it, you're going to stop any glue squeeze out hitting the wood that you've just sanded. It's going to save you a lot of work down the line. But remember, some tape you can put on while the pieces are flat, but others will have to go on when the joint is actually put together, just like you'll see on this piece that goes inside the rebate. And here's a general tip for clamping. Make sure that the clamps are placed so that the pressure is even and along the piece. A good way to test this is to ensure that the bar is parallel to the piece of wood that you are clamping. And don't just rely on the clamps themselves, use clamping supports like these squares, because not only will that show you where you're going to clamp the pieces together afterwards once you've got glue on, but they're also going to keep the piece lined up and square. And after all that preparation, it's finally time to glue this piece together. There are many wood glues on the market, but just ensure that you're picking the right one. Things I like to bear in mind are: where's the piece going to be, indoor or outdoor? Do you need food safe? Or in this situation, because it's a semi-complicated glue up, do you need a bit more open time? That is the time it takes for the glue to cure. And when you're applying the glue itself, make sure that you're covering every mating surface with not too much but not too little glue. You can place the pieces together now and start putting on your clamps, but don't fully tighten the first ones up on the first pass. I like to apply very gentle pressure until all clamps are on and then rotate, tightening as we go. But don't tighten them too far, a little bit of squeeze out is good. But what you don't want is to squash all of the glue out of each joint. And now you can take a minute to look over the joints, checking for alignment, because it is not too late to take this thing apart, wipe off all the glue and just start again if you need to. But if you're happy, place your glue up to one side and leave it for the correct amount of time. And adjust that time for the temperature of your workshop. If it's cold, it might take a bit longer. If it's very hot, the glue might cure really quickly. And while it's curing, and this won't be a very popular tip, clear your workspace. Because having a nice clear space makes it really easy for when you take the clamps off at the right time. And a tip for this is don't leave the clamps or the tape on for too long. I find that no matter what tape you use, it definitely gets harder to take off the longer you leave it. I generally tend to find that overnight is the sweet spot. Anything more and you might end up causing yourself a few more issues. And a little tip to consider: if any of the tape proves tricky to get off, apply a little bit of heat to it and soften up some of the gum. I get asked a lot which tapes I prefer. To be honest, there's no single one. But choose wisely. You want less residue, you want sticky and stretchy, but best not to be too sticky. If any of the joints have got any squeeze out or any tape is stuck in there, use a nice sharp chisel to get it out. Sanding will only cause you problems down the line because you'll probably end up going against the grain, whereas a sharp chisel will give you the cleanest job. And now check for alignment. You want nice, square, tight joints. Better to know now if it's gone wrong, because you can still fix it or, at worst, pivot. And now go back to your plans. Measure what you've actually got and adjust the plans accordingly. So the plans are a good guide, but always do referential measurements from the actual piece that you're building into. And where possible, if you've got matching sizes like the sides of all 4 of the drawers we're going to make a cut list where you batch things out for repeatability and accuracy. But this is a massive tip. Remember to account for joinery. If you're doing rebates, for instance, you need to account for the size of the joint. And as a general rule of thumb with the table saw, the least you need to move that fence, the more accurate you're going to be. So cut all the side pieces together, then all the front pieces, and so on and so forth. And when you're looking at the first pieces you've cut, if you've got any doubt that you don't think they're the right size, just take them back to the piece that they're fitting into and take a good look. This is possibly one of the biggest tips in this whole build. Sneak up on a fit. Measure, cut long, offer it up, cut it again, offer it up again, cut again until you get the perfect fit. You can take wood off, but you can't put it back on again. If you're going for a really clean aesthetic on a piece, really think about where the focus is. Don't waste time picking the grain of parts that won't be seen, but carefully select the boards and the orientation of the faces that are going to be on show, like these drawer fronts. Always consider grain flow. It's a really simple and effective way of making your piece look stunning. Now, once I've cut the back and the sides of these drawers, you'll notice that I'm not actually using a tape measure. I'm actually going to be measuring the fronts from the backs to make sure that I've got a square drawer. With any build, being flexible and changing during the build is absolutely vital. Does what you've made so far look like the image that you had for it in your head? Is it better? Is it worse? Is there something you can do to change it, to improve it? Also consider where the finished item is going to go. Do you want it to be subtle, or do you want it to stand out? Is it a feature piece? For mine, I'm erring on the side of subtle. I'll show you where it's going to live later. Now, I made a mistake here, but it does highlight a really handy tip. Order of operations. For instance, before I cut all the drawer parts down, I should have put a rebate across all of them. As it is, I'm now going to have to do 16 just to hold the drawer bottoms instead of 4. And don't be afraid to line everything up so you can really see and mark where you're going to cut each of these rebates. That's going to help you avoid mistakes. And here's a random router tip I learned the hard way. If you want your router bit to be as secure as possible, clean the dust out from under the collet. And if you want your cut to be as accurate as possible, use some of these straddling setup blocks. And I'll leave a link down below for anybody who's got a 3D printer. Always do a test cut and make sure it's the same dimension wood that you're going to do the actual cutting on. Multiple passes will get you a cleaner finish. If you try and do everything in one pass, then you're going to get a load of tear out. And if, like me, you're going to be cutting rebates for the joinery and to hold the base, if you make the rebates for the joinery a little bit deeper, you guarantee hiding the rebate that's got the base in it. And a tip of my own making here. Double check which pieces actually need rebates and which ones don't. Otherwise, you're going to need another tip, and that is learning to embrace and fix mistakes on the fly. Much like I have here by accidentally putting a rebate in one of the sides instead of just the front and back. Because I've had to glue in another piece, cut it, plane it, sand it, and though you can't see it hugely, it's still a mistake. Much like the tear out that I got from my router. CA glue gets you out of a jam more often than you'll realise. And just like before, do a dry fit. But checking for square is not necessarily enough on its own. Knowing why something isn't square and how to fix it is also a key skill. It could be clamp alignment, it could be the wood itself, it could be badly cut joinery. It could take just an extra clamp to fix it, or you may need to recut some of your rebates. I've saved the bases till last because I'm measuring from the drawer box itself. Not only will that give me the best fit when I sneak up on it, but it also means that the base of the drawer will also help to hold the drawer square. But while you're sneaking up on that fit, you don't need to actually cut all the way down. Just make small cuts, offer it up to the drawer. It's going to save you a lot of time and effort. And if you need to, once again, refine it with hand tools. And I'm not adding these onto the list again, but do tape up your joints again. Because these drawer boxes are much smaller, any squeeze out's going to be even harder to get out. Now, we've sanded the drawer parts up to this stage, so we don't need to worry too much about the insides, but we haven't done the bases. And this brings up a very important tip. When sanding plywood, especially this cheap stuff, move fast and move lightly. It won't take a lot to sand straight through that really thin veneer. And if, like me, you happen to get any tear out, align the base of your board so that the rebate hides it, because you've got a decent amount of overlap there. And while we're doing the glue up, I've got a really good tip for anybody constructing boxes or drawer boxes using rebates. Put your first clamps on really gently just to hold everything together, and then use a squeeze clamp to pull the sides into the rebates, before you then tighten up the original clamps. This is going to give you the best shot of tight joints in a square box. And it does lead us nicely onto the next tip. Choose the appropriate clamps or the clamps that are best for each job. F-clamps are great for strength, squeeze clamps are great for speed. Then, like before, check it square and leave it somewhere out of the way for the glue to cure. Whenever you're building with rebates, you're always going to be left with a tiny overhang. Just remember, there are many ways in woodworking of getting the same job done. I'm just going to show you a couple here. First of all, if you've got a large enough overlap, you can use a flush trim saw. But with all of these, understanding which direction the fibres are going in and where they're strong and weak is really important. Like with a flush trim saw, start one end, but I always like to make sure that I've trimmed off the other end as well, so when I get there and finish the cut, it doesn't pop off the fibres. With a hand plane, don't tip it back off the piece, otherwise you'll put a slope where you don't want one. And if you plane from the side inwards, all of those fibres are nicely protected by the wood behind them. So this will alleviate any chance of tear out. And again, come in from each end. And this is another one where I'll show you the mistake by making it. Keep your workspace floor clear. So maybe don't straddle one of your glue ups that's in clamps. Take the time to keep your edges crisp. I like to take some sandpaper that's been glued to a board like some plywood so it's nice and flat, and I like to carry on from there till almost the end. And if you're then going to finish the job with a power sander, don't let the power sander slip over the edge of the work. And also understand the shape of the sanding pad. Because it's not perfectly flat, I find it works best in this situation if 90% of the sander is on the board itself. And the best gauge you have for when these rebates are flush with the sides are your fingers. They'll tell you when it's flat long before any tool. Now the build's getting to an exciting time. But you've still got the chance to make decisions on the fly, so put everything together, put all the drawers into place, and take one last look at it. Because even now you're not locked into leaving it like this. Maybe you want to add a face frame, a contrast of colour. In a pinch, if you didn't like the drawer fronts, you could even apply a veneer and change the whole look entirely. Now before we can finish the construction, everything needs a little bit of a tidy up. And this is where you need to choose the appropriate tools for the job. Here's two. One, clamps that hold the work in the right position. And two, a good hand plane with a decent sole length to ensure all the sides are at the same level. But any hand tool with a sharp edge is only as good as how sharp it is. But even a sharp iron in a hand plane can't always get you out of going the wrong direction along the grain. So always read the grain and go in the right direction. You'll notice here that I actually do get away with it a few times because my tools are sharp, but not every time. Butt joints, miter joints and rebate joints like this have builds that they're particularly suited for, but each one of them has its own weaknesses. So take the time to learn how best to strengthen each of your joints. For instance, miter joints work really well with splines, and rebates and butt joints work really well with through dowels. I'm going to use this 3mm brass rod, and as I never remember which drill hole works best for it, I've decided to test 5 that I think are close. And when drilling anything where you don't want to go all the way down or through, set a depth stop or marker, like this tape, and as an extra tip for this, if you leave the flag flapping, you'll know when you've got to that depth because all the debris that's come out with the drill will get wiped away by the blue tape. If you can, do the first pass on a side that's not going to be seen. It may seem daft to me putting these brass dowels on the underside of this drawer box, but it's a great place to practice, and any mistakes, well, they'll never be seen. Marking is vitally important to hit the middle of the board that you're drilling into. And also, if you don't have a brad point drill bit, use a center punch to mark your location perfectly so that all your dowels are in alignment. And the reason I'm using these brass dowels is a tip in itself. Don't stick to just wood. Use different mediums. Brass here is perfect because you can work it with woodworking tools and it provides a really nice contrast to the wood. Not everything has to match to look good. Now you could sink the bar into each hole, let the glue cure and then chop it off, then sink what's left into the next hole. But what I find works best in this scenario is to cut everything to a length that's 1 or 2 millimeters larger than the hole itself. That way you're going to have a nice easy cleanup afterwards. I'm actually going to set one of these dowels in too long to show you how much of an added hassle it is. I have to say I'm getting away with it here because as it's on the corner I can hack away the extra with a saw, but what if it was in the middle? It wouldn't be so easy to protect the finish of the wood. All the others are really easy to clean down to flush with the wood. Because I chose a metal, it can easily be worked with woodworking tools. But there are a couple of important tips. 1, keep all your tools parallel to the face that you're sanding down to. And 2, clean up all of those metal filings before you go any further. And some of you may be thinking, why don't I just power sand it all the way down? I've found that it's far more likely to cause damage to either your sander or the work itself if you don't take most of the metal off first. Once you've done one side of your workpiece, make sure you clear all of the filings and all of the dust and debris off your workbench, and maybe even lay some cloths down so that when you turn the piece over, you're not just causing damage to the wood that you've sanded. Now, drawers are no good without runners. I'm just placing some battens between the drawers here because 1, they'll stop the drawers going back too far, and 2, it's a really cheap way of having the drawers on runners. But I'm taking my time to align the drawers. And the tip here is to use what you have. Me, I'm just going to use some playing cards as shims, even on either side, and I'm placing in as many as it takes to get a nice, clean, even gap around all of the drawers. I've even placed a few shims underneath the bottom drawer to ensure there's a gap there too. But it doesn't get the perfect result because I used this technique to glue the runners in themselves, and they weren't square. But there's a tip in itself here. I've glued these in with CA glue because it's brittle, and if I make mistakes, I can remove it with minimal damage that can be cleaned up easily. Far better to do what I'm doing now, take a board, get it to the accurate height using blue tape, fix in all of your runners using that one board, which will ensure that you've got everything accurate and the same throughout. Now take a step back and take one last look at it. As I've said many times, there's still time to make adjustments to features. But if you're happy, now's the time to get into sanding. And here's the second half of the sanding tips. First, don't rush it. Take another look over everything, and if you need to go back to the original grit we sanded with because there's dings and scratches, go back to that and start there. Work up through the grit slowly. Don't jump more than half the original grit. I like to go 80, 120, 150, 180. If you want to know when to move from one grit to the next, use pencil lines. But the pencil you use is important. These propelling pencils with a hard lead may leave dents and marks in the wood itself. Use a nice thick soft pencil and it'll be easy to sand off and it won't leave any marks behind. And if you've got multiple parts to sand, this may sound obvious, but don't keep swapping the sandpaper. Do 120 grit on every part, then 150, then 180. But change the sandpaper when it's needed, because using old and tired sandpaper will do a less efficient job as using new, but you don't want to throw money at the problem. Once I'm up to 150, I like to finish by breaking the edges using a hand sander. I find a power sander takes too much off here and you'll end up with uneven edges. And if you really want to get out every single scratch and leave a perfect finish, shine light across your work. I like to do the last pass by hand, moving with the grain. That tends to get me the best finish. But don't oversand and don't think that getting up to the highest grit will get you the best finish, because I tend to stop at 180 if I'm going to be using an oil finish, something that penetrates, or if a finish is going to sit on the wood, I'll stop at 240 grit. Speaking of finish, if you're happy with the sanding, now it's time to move on to the finish. But first, did you forget anything? Like draw pulls? I decided to add an extra tip in here. Let your features follow through the piece. So I've used brass dowels, so I decided to cut a piece of wood with a rebate, sink in some of this square stock brass dowel, cut it into pieces, sand it and polish it, and then glue them to the drawers as the draw pulls. That way I've got a nice brass feature flowing throughout the piece. You can do it with wood type, wood grain, angles. Following your features through like this means people subconsciously are more likely to like the piece as they see it. And now we can finally apply finish, but first, a tip for finishing. Clean your entire workspace after sanding. Make sure that all of the dust and debris is off the surface that you're going to be finishing on top of. And what finish to apply? Well, choose the finish that's appropriate for the job. Consider the placement, the use, how it might change the wood, and what finishes you are proficient with. Try some of that on an offcut from the wood you've used to build with, because it's likely to darken it, but it might change it to a tone that you don't actually like. And then take your time. It's the same for sanding and applying finish. You've spent hours building something. Don't rush the last bits just to get the win. And once the finish cures, take the win. You've completed the build. But there are a couple of tips that I think might just be the most important that I haven't told you yet.
If this is a gift or a statement piece that others will see, let it be exactly that. Don't point out any blemishes or mistakes, they probably won't ever see them. And be kind to yourself. If the end result isn't perfect, that's because it was made from imperfect materials by a human, and that's enough. Learn from any mistakes that you've made. That's how you improve build after build. And as you grow into this craft, encourage others. Don't be a gatekeeper, there's enough of those already. Share your experiences freely so others can learn too. This was just a simple set of drawers built because my alcove office needed them. I really hope that you've enjoyed the process, and thank you if you've got to this stage of the video. Thank you too for my patrons for all their support. If you haven't seen the alcove office build yet, where these drawers are going to live, it's up there. So whether you pop over to Patreon and join us for some behind the scenes videos, or you click on that or any one of my videos, thank you so much. I'll see you over there.